And now for something completely different. Marvel Snap is a game I've been playing since November, and one of my personal goals has been to see how far I can go completely free to play. No bundles, no boosting with extra gold, and not even battle passes. I've hit infinite rank just about every season, only missing 2 because I didn't really have time to play them, but a recent update added a new challenge in the form of Conquest mode, a gauntlet requiring 11 wins against increasingly difficult opponents in a first to 10 cubes battle. Now, there are checkpoints at each division, but to win the final challenge, the Infinity Conquest, you have to win 5 matches in a row, and that's what we're going to be taking a look at today. With a little practice and a lot of luck, I was able to put this deck to the test against some of the top players in the game, many of whom have spent hundreds to unlock cards I won't be seeing for a long time. Now, the first game in the Conquest was a bit of a freebie. It really came down to Spider-Ham knocking out a number of key components of his deck, either the MODOK discard card or the Apocalypse that wanted to be discarded. The match was short-lived as he retreated shortly thereafter, and there's not really much to show about it. We're going to go ahead and jump ahead to battle number 2 with a lot more back and forth. It's up against a Silver Surfer deck, something that I played up against a lot when it first came out, as well as the month following. We're on Weird World for our first match, so we get to see a ton of the options and play with our opponent's cards. In this case, I play Storm on the right side to flood it, and Darkhawk to secure that lane cleanly. After that, I opt to play Sera in the middle lane, which should pave the way for Juggernaut to clear things out, even if he doesn't play there, thanks to the Kingpin on the left side. He does end up playing in Quantum Realm, but with a clean Silver Surfer swing, I'm going to be able to secure this one and take an early lead in Battle 2. Being 4 cubes ahead, and with a very solid starting hand, I decide to snap right off the bat and get into it. Along with that, we get the location Attilan, which helps a ton. With Rock Slide and the fact that he's only played 1 card by turn 3, he's shuffling a huge amount of cards into his deck, which powers up my Darkhawk, and it ends up drawing him more useless cards, the rocks. He's sitting on 10 cards in his deck going into turn 4, and we are feeling really good. Now, unfortunately, I don't end up drawing the Darkhawk, which does put me at a potential disadvantage, but I decided to take a bit of a gamble against hedging the fact that he may be able to play Silver Surfer on the right side. I put everything there, hoping that he ignores the middle. Instead, he doesn't even get the chance to play Silver Surfer because of all the card shuffling, putting cards back into his deck. He just doesn't get to play with the tools that he started with nearly as much as you would in a normal game. So at this point, I'm up 10-2, and I said it was a back and forth. We're going to see here going into round 3 that I struggle to get control on the board thanks to the location Asteroid M pulling everything to the side. This does affect him as well, but he's got a better position to play around. Round 4 ends up being pretty interesting, with Gamma Lab building up a few free Hulks. Shang-Chi is a prime real estate. He is in both decks. We both want to play Sera, and I decide I want to go ahead and play Shang-Chi on turn 4, since the location New York would force the Hulk into a location I can't predict. However, he ends up playing Kingpin, and this guy loves New York. If you go to his location, it will destroy you. And this normally would be something that I would avoid, but there's a weird interaction here that I kind of feel it's a bit of a bug, because despite me having priority, as you see at the top of the screen, his Kingpin moves first, it smashes my Hulk, and I kind of feel like that should have happened. But where that may have been a bit of luck on his side, the rest of his plays are all skill. Juggernaut is the linchpin in his plan, and he combos it with Kingpin magnificently. Taking a look at round 5, the right location is flooding thanks to Storm, and normally you would ignore that lane because a Juggernaut would be played to secure it and push everything to the side, but instead he opts to play Kingpin. This allows him to play Juggernaut into the middle lane and guarantee the lane, because anything that gets pushed into the right lane will immediately be destroyed. It's a combination I have not seen put together in this particular way, and completely caught me off guard. Now, I know that he has Rogue, and I know that he has Shang-Chi, so it makes me very hesitant to play Darkhawk earlier on in the round. However, if I'm waiting until turn 6 to play Darkhawk and Mystique, then what ends up happening is Juggernaut gets to control the board and push things exactly where he wants, which makes it almost impossible for me to play. I have to get a game without that combo to worry about, and we get it in round 7. We get Darkhawk in play, Mystique in play, and it ends up coming down to a bit of a 50-50 if we would have gone to round 8, with this Juggernaut pushing Darkhawk away from Bar with No Name. While we do take a few hits, we advance to Battle 3, and that is going to be up against a Black Panther Arnim Zola deck with a few other enablers like Shuri. There's a few off-meta cards, a Yondu, and you don't always see Storm with this, but in the end, it is a pretty one-sided matchup where he's not really able to get these pieces in play, or at least they get overwhelmed by the power of Darkhawk. Now, unfortunately, my recording crashed prematurely, which means we don't get to see the rest of the match, but like I said, it was a pretty straightforward match, which takes us to battle number 4, and it's a bit of a doozy. We're up against a High Evolutionary deck, which is one of the stronger decks in the metagame at this time. High Evolutionary modifies some of the weaker cards in the game with new abilities, allowing them to drain your attack power as well as amplify their own, manipulating their own energy. I used to include a soft counter to this, a tech card called Luke Cage, which would negate the damage reduction effect, but I did not expect High Evo to be that significant in this next month metagame with the new cards included. Instead, for this conquest, I decided to include Black Widow, which prevents your opponent from drawing one card. This amplifies Darkhawk and Mystique's damage by 2, potentially, as well as takes options away from your opponent. The locations weren't great for me in round 1, with Great Web pulling everything to the left, allowing Sunspot to shine, and nowhere preventing me from using some of my reveal effects. I really wanted to get as many cards into Need of Leer as possible, but that just wasn't happening until the end of the game. Going into turn 6, he confidently drops down the Hulk, which under normal circumstances would beat just about any card in the space. But with Killmonger taking out his Sunspot, I'm able to get a tie-break situation on the left lane and push Nidavaleer's power amplification to my advantage across the board. This gives me a 4-cube lead going into round 2. Round 2 starts off hot with Project Pegasus and giving plenty of energy to both players, with the drain cards being less impactful on his side because he doesn't know where my cards are going to be played just yet. Instead, we get 2 early rocks and block a card draw going into turn 2. Since I've already drawn First Blood and I've got a clear target with Shang-Chi, I decide to snap and hope that Spider-Ham hits something big. Unfortunately for me, on the 5th turn he plays Wave, which is really difficult for my deck to deal with. I want to be playing 2, maybe even 3 cards on turn 6, and that's not going to be possible with Wave. So unfortunately I have to retreat, and the cube count goes 8-6. In round 3, both sides are off to a bit of a slow start. On turn 4 here, I think I misplay a bit. I should have played Rock Slide to the right to activate Aunt May's, so that on turn 6 I wouldn't have to worry about Darkhawk or Mystique potentially being pushed to the Isle of Silence. One thing I haven't mentioned yet is that my deck really prefers to play without initiative, and what that means is that I want to be losing. If you're losing majority of your locations, or losing by a greater magnitude in the one location that you're winning, then you are going to be playing second. Your cards reveal second. This not only protects cards like Darkhawk, played on turn 6, by being taken out by Enchantress or Shang-Chi, but also allows my Shang-Chi or Killmonger to activate after their cards have been played, hitting more targets. Now, something interesting to note is in Conquest mode, and in Battle mode in general, if you're going into round 4 with an even number of cubes, you want to consider retreating or snapping fairly early in the game. The reason for this is going to an odd number of cubes rarely will take a life away from you and reduce the amount of games that you can lose to continue playing. But if you feel like you have an advantage, you can snap early, set the game to 2 cubes, and make it have more of an impact going into it. In this case, Triskelion prevents the opponent from drawing cards, amplifying Darkhawk, and I like what I see in my hand. I go ahead and snap. Now on turn 2, I could have played Goose on the right. I opted for Black Widow, assuming that he would play at least one card from Triskelion or from his base deck, but unfortunately he doesn't, and this ends up being a bit of a waste because he's not drawing a card anyways in this case, and I could have played Black Widow later. I'm not too worried about Nebula building up because I always have the option of Killmongering it later if it builds up too big. So I play into the Vault, which unfortunately is exactly what my opponent needed, since he gets to play a randomly drawn Professor X on the left lane and make it so that I don't have a win condition. Goose blocks Hulk, and the 3 damage is not going to cut it on that right lane. If he plays even a Sunspot, he's got it covered. So I end up retreating and eating my own snap. The start of round 5, you see the lore-accurate sacrifice of Black Widow into Vormir, and along with Korg building up the amount of cards in his deck. All I need is a Darkhawk to start feeling really good about this one. With Zabu down and Darkhawk in hand, I'm happy to snap and try to make this the last round of the battle. By combining the card cost reduction aspects of Zabu and Sera, I'm able to drop 3 powerful cards on turn 6 and confidently take this battle. It is possible that he could have stacked armor onto the left and won this one, but I wanted to stack both Darkhawk and Mystique on the same lane to play around Hulk. So here we are, battle number 5, 1 win away from clinching the Infinity Conquest. Running all the way through this Infinity Gauntlet was one of my goals from the start of the season, and at this point, I'll be honest, I'm shaking. 1 win away, and we're there. While my queue for the last battle took me about a minute and a half to find an opponent, in this case, my enemy was waiting. I am nervous, but when Sinister London shows up, I'm feeling a lot better. Shang-Chi is usually able to deal with a lot of the big threats that people like to copy on London, and between Korg, Rock Slides effects being doubled, and the potential to get a double Darkhawk and or Mystique, it is one of the best locations for my deck. Between double Korg and Rock Slide, he has 6 rocks in his deck and is very likely to draw them in the next turn. Darkhawk in hand, Mystique ready to roll, I drop Sera to reduce their cost and try to close this one out. And then all of a sudden, this guy snaps. He knows what kind of cards I'm playing, he probably knows what I'm going for, and has seen the rocks fly in, and still he confidently goes into round 5. Dropping Spider-Man on Sinister London and dashing the dreams of a quick and easy win. Luckily, we didn't make it to turn 6, and I only lose 4 cubes for the first round, but it sets me back hard. With the Nexus location front and center, the only thing I'm thinking about is that Spider-Man card. I want to try to put in as much damage as possible before turn 5 comes out. Not worried about Shang-Chi, Enchantress, anything like that, just putting cards in. go ahead and I drop another snap going into turn 5. Even though the goal is to fill up the Nexus right now, there are a lot of support cards that I can play next turn, and so I go ahead and drop the Sera in middle. With the energy cost reduction, I've got a strong turn 6, with Rock Slide amplifying middle lane's damage by 8, Polaris most likely pulling Sunspot out of the lane, and Shang-Chi dealing with any big threats that drop because I don't have initiative. Now, the fact that he only played Wasp seems silly, but it's actually the best play he could have made. By spending 0 mana, he ends up increasing Sunspot's damage by 6, which would have allowed him to push the Nexus's damage over that of Darkhawk and Mystique, even with the Rock Slide. Fortunately, Polaris pulls him away, and the board is mine. Going into round 3, the score is tied 6-6. Both of us 4-0 in our Infinity Conquest runs. Both of us have to be sweating when Weird World shows up again. My opening hand wasn't bad, but it's also not that convincing when you consider Darkhawk, Mystique, and both Rock Slingers are still in my deck. But on round 3, Luke's bar reveals, and Zabu is the only card that's going to be able to stick there. I snap it up and see what Expansion has to offer. Only to be met with Storm, nullifying that location, and Wasp, eating away at Zabu's damage 1 point at a time. Costs 0 mana, Luke's bar sends it back to him each and every turn, so he's able to do this over and over until I'm in the negative. And now we've got a 4-cube match with only 6 cubes left on either side. As it stands, I've got the upper hand in the left location, but with the extra rocks that can be thrown in, Darkhawk is still not to be counted out. Still, I've got Spider-Man for turn 5, and dropping it in middle should give me a huge advantage. At this point, I'm thinking I'm going to play Jeff into the flooded location and play 4 damage in the middle lane to try to secure the game. But then I get the perfect draw to close out the game. Dr. Doom throwing Doombots on the 2 side lanes means that no matter what card he plays at Luke's bar, I've got this one in the bag. Now my opponent has the option of retreating and taking this to another round with 2 cubes left, but he decides to fight it out with what he's got, and it's not enough. And with that, I take down the second High Evolutionary deck in a row and beat the Infinity Conquest, and I couldn't be happier. We claim our Infinity Avatar and we call it a night. I hope you enjoyed some rare Marvel Snap content on the channel, or maybe even learned something. If you did, look below, there's a like or subscribe button with your name on it. And either way, really appreciate you for tuning in, and good luck in your conquests.